It stands taller than a 40-story building. It holds back more water than some entire lakes, and it can light up over 40 million homes. Ethiopia has built Africa's largest dam, the $5 billion Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD. For Ethiopians, it's a dream come true, a national symbol of pride and progress. But for Egypt, this dam is a looming nightmare. Why? Because the Nile isn't just a river, it's the lifeblood of a nation. And now, much of that lifeblood flows behind Ethiopia's new wall of concrete. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. It's the best way to support this channel and ensure we can keep bringing you stories of the world's biggest megaprojects. The dream of a dam. For millennia, Egypt held unrivaled control over the Nile. But here's the twist. 85% of the river's waters actually originate in Ethiopia, from the Blue Nile. Despite this, colonial-era treaties in 1929 and 1959 allocated nearly all rights to Egypt and Sudan, leaving upstream nations like Ethiopia completely excluded. For Ethiopians, this was a historic injustice, and in the early 2000s, Prime Minister Meles Zenawi decided it was time to rewrite history. He envisioned a colossal dam that would harness Ethiopia's natural resources, power its cities, and prove to the world that Africa could build on its own terms. Construction began in 2011 near the Sudanese border. And here's what makes this story even more remarkable. Ethiopia didn't rely solely on foreign loans. Instead, millions of citizens bought bonds, donated salaries, and funded the project themselves. GERD became more than infrastructure. It became a movement. Record-breaking dimensions. The GERD is nothing short of an engineering marvel. The main gravity dam stretches 1,780 meters long and 145 meters tall. Beside it lies a 5-kilometer auxiliary saddle dam, working together to hold back a reservoir of 74 billion cubic meters of water. That's about 1.5 times the size of Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States. Inside, 13 turbines roar with the power to generate over 5,000 megawatts of electricity, more than doubling Ethiopia's power supply in a single stroke. That's enough to run 16 terawatt hours of electricity per year, enough to power Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania combined for an entire year. Engineers built the dam with modern safeguards, gated spillways, sediment handling systems, and seismic reinforcements to withstand the risks of the East African Rift. Every cubic meter of its 10.7 million cubic meters of concrete was poured with one goal: permanence. National triumph and tragedy. For Ethiopia, GERD is more than megawatts. It's a national identity. Over 90% of its $5 billion cost was raised domestically, making it one of the rare megaprojects in the world funded by ordinary people rather than global banks. But triumph was shadowed by tragedy. In 2018, Ethiopia's chief engineer, Simignu Bekele, was found dead under mysterious circumstances. He had been the face of the project, a symbol of its progress. His death shocked the nation, but the work continued. By 2022, the first turbines were generating electricity. By 2024, the vast reservoir had been filled in stages, and in September 2025, the dam was officially inaugurated, a new chapter for the Nile. Promise of power. What does GERD mean for Ethiopia? First, an end to blackouts that have plagued its 120 million citizens for decades. In Addis Ababa and across rural towns, millions will finally gain access to reliable electricity. Second, GERD positions Ethiopia as a regional energy exporter. Deals are already being negotiated with Sudan, Kenya, and Djibouti to buy surplus power. The Horn of Africa could soon become a hub for clean, renewable electricity. Third, the dam will tame the Nile's unpredictable flow. For Sudan, that means fewer destructive floods and steadier irrigation during dry months. For Ethiopia, it means the potential to expand fisheries, boost agriculture, and stabilize its drought-prone northwest. In short, GERD isn't just a dam. It's Ethiopia's ticket to becoming an economic powerhouse. Downstream Fears. But for Egypt, the story looks very different. Over 90% of its fresh water comes from the Nile, sustaining over 100 million people. Farms, factories, and entire cities depend on its flow. Egyptian officials have called GERD an existential threat. Their fears are twofold. During the years of reservoir filling, reduced flow could devastate Egyptian agriculture. And in the long run, without a binding agreement, Ethiopia could decide how much water to release, especially in drought years. Sudan, caught in between, faces its own risks. While it welcomed regulated water and potential power imports at first, officials later worried about dam safety and the lack of communication on water releases. Diplomatic deadlock. The dispute over GERD has played out on the world stage. Egypt and Sudan demand a legally binding agreement that guarantees water releases. Ethiopia insists on its sovereign right to use the Blue Nile and prefers flexible, non-binding guidelines. Negotiations have stretched across years, involving the African Union, the United States, and even the UN Security Council. In 2020, the US and World Bank brokered a draft deal. Ethiopia walked away at the last moment. Since then, the stalemate has continued. Egypt has lobbied fiercely in international forums, warning that the dam threatens its survival. At times, officials have even hinted at sabotage or military action, though diplomacy remains the main battlefield. The road ahead: cooperation or conflict? Now that GERD is complete, the Nile faces a turning point. Managed wisely, the dam could be a source of shared prosperity. Ethiopia lights up its homes and sells power abroad. Sudan gains flood control, and Egypt continues to receive its lifeblood. But mismanaged? The consequences could be dire. Imagine a severe drought, with Ethiopia holding back water to protect its own needs. Egypt could face shortages that spark political or even military escalation. Conversely, a sudden release of water without coordination could flood downstream communities in Sudan. The Nile is no longer a river controlled by treaties from a century ago. It is now a river controlled by trust, or the lack of it. Conclusion: the Colossus of the Nile. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam stands as a modern colossus, a triumph of African ambition, engineering, and resilience. But it also stands as a test. Will the nations of the Nile find common ground, or will the river that has united civilizations for millennia become a fault line of division? One thing is certain: the story of the Nile has entered a new chapter, and the ripple effects of this dam will be felt not just in Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan, but across all of Africa. What do you think? Will GERD be remembered as Africa's beacon of progress, or as the spark of regional conflict? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic explorations of the world's biggest megaprojects.